Hello, and welcome to Dear Human Resources, the podcast where we explore the human side of work, the leadership decisions, workplace dynamics, and people challenges that shape our organizations. I'm your host, Germain. Today's episode is a powerful one because it sits at the intersection of leadership, empathy, and lived experience. Our topic is Dementia's surprising lessons for today's leaders. And my guest is Glenna Hetch, a leadership speaker, consultant, and author with more than 3 decades of executive leadership experience in HR and training. She has worked with organizations such as Starbucks, Levy Restaurants, at Walt Disney World, Buffalo Wild Wings, franchise leadership groups, and national associations. Glenna is known for her direct, practical approach to leadership, the kind grounded in real-world experience, honest conversations, and the daily signals leaders send that shape accountability, engagement, and culture. But Glenna's perspective on leadership was also deeply shaped by something very personal. Several years spent caring for her mother, who was living with dementia. And that experience revealed unexpected insights about leadership, about behavior, and the realities people carry into the workplace. Glenna, welcome to Dear Human Resources.
Thank you for having me.
Glenna, your work focuses on what actually drives culture and performance in organizations. And today we're connecting that with something many leaders don't really talk about enough, which is caregiving and the invisible realities people carry into work. So you spent several years caring for your mother as she lived with dementia. And I'm really sorry about that, by the way. It's a very difficult experience, I imagine. And it's one that really is very personal, but also incredibly complex. So looking back on that time, what were some leadership lessons that you didn't expect to learn?
Let me pose this as my mom had dementia for 9 years, and 7 of those she was on hospice. And up until that point in time, I had been working in human resources roles. My roles in companies were always leadership in HR and training. And so let's frame what a human resources position might look like. And that is typically a fixer role. Even as you're more senior, you're just doing it on a larger scale, whether it's benefits or employee issues, creating a people strategy, hiring, downsizing, teamwork. All of those issues tend to impact some type of change, shift, fix, whatever that might be. So my career was as a fixer. And honestly, I was really good at that. So here comes dementia with my mom. And for the first 2 years that we were together, I tried to fix her. I read research. I went to symposia, support groups. I even got certified as an assisted living manager in the hopes that I would learn how to fix her and make this disease go away. And of course, I realized quickly, dementia is not something you fix, it's something you face. Coming to that conclusion wasn't easy. There were so many times where I tried everything that I knew and none of it worked, and I got really frustrated or angry or would lose my cool. Finally, I just gave up and decided I would be present. I would hold her hand and enjoy each day that I had with her. Being present and just be with no agenda, no result, no outcome. From that, I developed a dementia relationship game. So the lesson that I realized from a leadership perspective is the importance of being present, of listening, observing with no agenda. And sometimes by doing that, you identify exactly what you need to do without the force fit or the we've done it this way kind of approach. And so the lesson really that I learned was presence and being there for somebody that I cared about, but also being there and knowing I had no answers and nothing to rely upon other than just being in the moment. And because of that, And because of the heightened awareness that I had, I was able to come up with some extraordinary solutions and interaction games that I probably would have never done. So in applying that to business is really, instead of being on to the next in this list of many to-do things, is just one thing at a time, looking around you, being present of the environment, witnessing the people, listening to what they're saying. And sometimes the greatest things are created out of that.
I think you're right. And you made some great points here. Leadership is often framed around clarity and directions, and sounds to me like you're highlighting something quite different, the importance of emotional awareness. Am I right?
Absolutely. For many, many years, I'm sure you have heard this as well, Marie. You recall that people were always told, leave your personal lives at the door, right? You're here to do a job, focus on the job. It was a really good strategy while it worked. But it's difficult now as you take life into work with you. Just imagine an employee who works from home now, so their life is staring them in the face. And if someone's in an office, but they have another job waiting for them at home, and it could be an aging parent, a sick child, whatever the case may be. So there's the balance, and the ability to shut one thing off and do another is much more difficult now than ever before. And so I always say the emotional awareness is really observing not the person on a face level, but what's going on. When folks are stressed, when they seem tired, when they're anxious. We all experience that. So I call emotional awareness deliberate leadership, inquiring what's going on, how are you, what's happening. And this awareness indicates that you care for the person, that you're compassionate, and it goes a long way to give support. Yeah, people have a lot going on these days, whether, it's with family or surgery or making ends meet, and they don't leave it at the door. And really what they're looking for is compassion and concern that will impact and help them move towards more engagement, productivity, and retention. So emotional awareness is what creates that heart-centered, service-centered leadership that we all talk about. And it's humanity at work. It's real. And so the leader has to become more aware of the surroundings and the people that are in them.
In fact, there's quite a bit of research on that phenomenon of the boundaries between work and private life. We call it the spillover effect. So if you have too much stress in one of those areas, whether it's work or private life, it seeps into the other boundaries. So Absolutely. If you have too much stress at home, it spills over into your work and vice versa. So thanks for making that point. Caregiving also means living with uncertainty, as you talked about. So every day can look different and emotions can shift quite quickly. How do you see those same dynamics showing up in organizations today?
So dementia was very interesting, and I'll share with you what it taught me from a leadership perspective. When someone has dementia, they're not the same every day. One day they may be 90, the next 30, the next 50. They may know you, they may not know you. So walking in with an expectation that it will be stable, that it will be same, that things will not shift, you quickly realize that's not the true reality of a caregiver. And so you just have to go with the flow. Now let's bring it into business. Because uncertainty in the work world and the world tend to breed emotional insecurity and some fear. And organizations are changing. Let's be honest about it. In order to be competitive, organizations have to know what's going on with their competitors. They have to constantly reinvent. And that is a prescription for uncertainty. I may not know that what we're reinventing is going to work, right? And so it's one of those, instead of being for sure, we may try different things to move forward as a business, to be more financially successful. And so the best thing that an organization can do is to understand that they may know what's going on as a leadership realm, but the people that are boots on the street or within the organization don't know all of the whys and what got us here and what's leading us to that. And sometimes leadership doesn't think they need to, but they really do, because the more information and communication they have, the more that insecurity or fear of the unknown tends to minimize and go away. And so leaders need to become masterful at communicating why changes are happening, how it might affect them. And even the phrase, we don't really know what the outcome is going to be, but we know we need to try. I know employees appreciate that, because then they feel like someone trusts them enough to be able to have a perspective about what's going on in the business. And then people can say, okay, we're all in this together. But I would say the number one is that leaders have to be upfront and communicate regularly. And when they do that, fears are minimized.
So let's talk about something many managers kind of struggle with. When someone's performance or behavior, for that matter, suddenly shifts. Maybe they miss deadlines, maybe they seem disengaged or become less communicative. Leaders often feel pressure to respond quite quickly. So when leaders don't fully understand the reason behind that shift, what approach should they take?
I have 5 points that I'll share with you, but I'll just give you a bit of an overview. Great question, and it's really very important. So the first is that leaders need to refrain from judgment until they understand the reason behind the shift. We often jump to conclusions. We may say they don't care, they're lazy, they're checked out, they don't want to work here anymore. In reality, it may be something else. It could be that, but it may be something quite different. I know for me, when I got a call that my mom was missing, at that point, I was a VP of Human Resources and Training. I walked into my boss, who was the CEO, and I said to him, you need to know I need to leave. My mom is in Chicago. She's gone missing. If you need to fill my position, I get it. And I understood that that was the only choice that I had. It was either to go or to go. And so that's really what I did. And I think it's important for people to understand what's underneath the situation that may be coming up. So the most important things are to realize that it may not be what you think it is, and you have to ask before you act. And that being flexible and adjusting the approach is important. You may hear that I need a little different schedule, or I need you to work with me. It doesn't mean that you're dropping your standard. It just may mean that you're adjusting the approach. Always make sure that you're understanding what's behind this, because people, if they're juggling something going on and with their personal life, they may be doing the best they can, having 2 full-time jobs. And so whatever the manager can do to support them is really important. Now, let's pretend that there is nothing going on and that there is a performance issue that shows up. Then you deal with it accordingly. But you need to know what you're dealing with in order to have the right conversation, solution, remedy, and expectation.
Let's talk about something called the invisible load, the responsibilities, the stress, and the emotional labor people carry that often remain unseen at work. Sometimes it is seen, sometimes it's not. What do leaders tend to misunderstand about this invisible load?
Let me give you some statistics. Is that in the caregiving part of it is what I was referring to more specifically in the invisible load. And caregiving doesn't only mean aging parents. It could mean children with special needs, somebody recovering from a surgery. It could be a substance abuse issue. So caregiving wears many different kinds of hats. And 1 in 4 employees are caregivers. And if you think about just the sheer numbers, there are 63 million caregivers that are trying to balance life. That number is staggering. And the people that will be requiring care will just increase by the hundreds of thousands year over year over year. So go back to the conversation about leaving things at the door. That's not an easy thing to do. And the invisible load is when I've got my job, whatever my job could be, project management, human resources, IT, and then the invisible load might be me caring for somebody else outside of work. And just think about something very basic, and I'm sure your listeners have had this experience before. Just imagine that you have a child who's sick. Maybe your child has the flu and you know you have to go to work. And fortunately, you have a parent that will come over and help out. That's a great situation to find yourself in. It doesn't mean that you forget. You get to work and the person who's the parent may call home 10 times. They're constantly watching their phone. They may be wondering, how are they doing? Do I need to take them to the doctor? Is my parent able to make that decision? And so they're always focused in two different places. The impact of that obviously is on productivity, but also all of the focus that you would hope they give to work is now split between two situations. That's what I refer to as the invisible load. So that's why it's so important when you see somebody who seems distracted or productivity is slipping or they don't seem like themselves. And we've all had that happen with employees, that you find out what's going on. So the invisible becomes visible. And in doing so, then how can we get them assistance? That's when it may be time to go to HR and have some support and the employee assistance program or flexibility in scheduling. But until you know what's going on and make the invisible visible, then it is easier to deal with and offer some solution and outcome.
What do you think leaders should do differently and right now?
The first things I would say is to be very observant, to connect with employees and inquire, how are you doing? And it's not just folks that may appear to be checked out. It's any of your employees. How are you doing? What's going on with you? So that you can celebrate wins and understand how they're doing and how they are. Be deliberate in your approach with your employees. I find that coaching, feedback, interacting, developing relationships sometimes can be very casual. And the challenge with that is it doesn't happen consistently. And what I'm talking about is make sure that you connect with people on a deliberate basis, how they're doing, speak with them, whether it's once a week or once every couple of weeks, to find out how their life is and what's going on with it. Will keep you focused in the relationship, rich and current. And in doing so, then be able to celebrate positive things that are going on and assist them with things that may be more challenging that could ultimately have an impact on work. And by doing that, you avoid those and try to prevent them from happening.
This conversation really highlights something many leaders overlook, the profound connection between empathy and effectiveness. Mm-hmm. And your experience really shows us that leadership isn't just about strategy or performance metrics. It's really about understanding the human realities that shape how people show up every day at work. And so I want to thank you for sharing both your professional expertise and such a meaningful personal perspective.
Thank you for that. I really desire for workplaces to be able to support the whole human. And we all have families and personal responsibilities, and those are our priorities. And I want to find ways to help organizations make not only the company and the outcome and the results a priority, but to marry that with the person's own family and personal responsibilities. And so it's really important in this day and age that we encompass both sides and allow the manager to be empathetic and the employees to have a great experience at work that supports them in their life.
Well said. Thank you again, Glenna. Support for this show comes from Western Carolina University, a campus of the University of North Carolina system, with the technical assistance of Kelly Minnis.